Hi, I'm Srshti Putcha. I'm currently working as a junior data scientist at Experian Data Labs in London, and I only started the role about 3 weeks ago. So up until this point, I have been a PhD student in computational statistics at Lancaster University, specifically at the Story Centre for Doctoral Training, based at Lancaster, and I've been in that program since 2018. So the role that I've started in is a hybrid role. So that currently means that we only go in 1 day a week, and the rest of the week we're working from home. I think at some point we'll move to 2 days a week, but at the moment it tends to be the case that everyone comes in on Tuesdays. So we have an office in Liverpool Street at the moment, and so the rest of the week we're all working from home. Most of our meetings happen on a Tuesday that are on a Teams basis. So everyone will check in then with the status of their projects, and then we'll plan for the next week. Monday through Friday, every morning at 9:30, we have a stand-up call, which is pretty standard, I think, in tech, which is where you talk about what you've done, talk about what you're going to do, and then everyone has a chance to say what they would like to do that day. And it usually only lasts about 15 minutes. And it tends to be the case that it's just a good way of like working out what's going on in a project and getting to grips with what we have to do for that week. The rest of the time is pretty much working solo. If we want to talk to anyone in our team when we're working from home, we tend to do it over Slack. And then the rest of the time we sort of we might set a meeting to talk about things, but it tends to be the case that most things are resolved fairly well with the kind of structure that we have. So I would say that the typical working week at Experian looks like that. It's definitely, I think, adapted through the pandemic, and it's something that will continue to evolve. I certainly have only experienced this for the last couple of weeks, and I've only actually joined the stand-ups as of this week. So I think so this is kind of my routine going forward. Definitely in the first 2 weeks of my job, there was a lot more time to just get used to working out my laptop and working out what bits of training that I needed to do to finish my induction for the company. And there's lots of small admin tasks that I've been doing lately. And from now on, I've been put on a project. So my working week will kind of end up having the same regular meetings and structure. And I think that will be quite nice because it'll be known. So the Experian Data Lab kind of sits generally a little bit outside of the main company, and it works as its own unit. We have about over 10 people. I think it's about 15. Someone might tell me that I'm wrong, but we have about 4 or 5 machine learning engineers. We have I would say there's about 4 product managers, but that currently varies because a couple of people are on maternity leave. But we have a couple of product managers, and then we have a bank of data scientists, and we kind of sit in an office together. And we work essentially within the UK and Ireland business for Experian. We tend to work, it's not necessarily on a consulting basis, and I'm not sure necessarily that people would like the fact that I've described it as consulting, but I've started to understanding as consulting because it generally tends to be the case that a piece of work will be pitched within the Experian main business and we'll sort of take it up. I've sort of come in on an existing project that we're doing for the Experian business. It's to do with marketing, and that's probably all I can talk about. The best part of the job so far has definitely been learning what it's like to operate and use statistics within industry. Coming from academia, I think I have some very preconceived notions about how I'm meant to code or how I'm meant to approach a topic, and it's just entirely different to doing my PhD. So my undergraduate degree was in mathematics and economics, and I studied that at the London School of Economics. For a long time, I thought that I was going to go into economics. Not that I'd studied it at school or really done anything with it. I just thought that it sounded like the thing to do. I thought I was going to go do a master's in economics. It turns out that I don't necessarily have the aptitude for pure economics, and it could have just been that those modules didn't favor my style of learning. I'm not really, to this day, I'm not really sure. But by the end of my second year, I realized that that wasn't what I was going to do, even though I'd set out to like try and do the best that I could in all of my modules at LSE. I came across an internship. It was a research-based internship for 8 weeks that my now PhD program was running. So I do my PhD through a doctoral training centre at Lancaster, and it was founded in I think 2012. So it's been several rounds of EPSRC funding at this point. But as part of their incentive to try, I guess it's a scheme to kind of raise awareness of the PhD program, they offer this undergraduate research internship where an undergraduate student is mentored by a first-year PhD student. So I did that in the summer of 2015. I got the option to do it. I hadn't really had much exposure to statistics beyond whatever I was made to do as a compulsory module in my first and second years. So this was, and also statistics as a research concept was something that was introduced to me over those 8 weeks. So I think I did a project on time series. My first year PhD supervisor was really lovely, and she held my hand through a lot of it, because at this point I hadn't even coded before. A maths degree doesn't necessarily lend itself to a lot of coding, especially in the first couple of years, unless you do a more computational module, and I certainly hadn't. So I think that was the first time that I started using R as a programming language, and it was also the first time that I got introduced to anything outside of what I had done at university. So Lancaster has certain research specialisms, and I think a lot of the PhD projects kind of fit those molds. So a lot of the internship projects would have naturally then been derived by those specialisms. So I got to see, I think about 5 or 6 different big topics, and we got seminars, we got introduced to all of those things that all other PhD students go to. So it was a pretty immersive experience. And I came back hooked basically at the end of 8 weeks. And so I did way more statistics in my third year. And then I knew that I wasn't done with just doing an undergraduate degree, so I wanted to do a master's at least in statistics to confirm that I really liked the subject. So that's what I then went on to apply for and do. I wasn't entirely sure I wanted to do a PhD at that point, mostly because of the long time commitment. But I knew that I could get a job in statistics after getting a master's at least. So I knew that I wanted to do at least a 1-year program to kind of confirm to myself that that was something that I was interested in long term. So I did that also at LSE. So I did that from 2016 to 2017. So that's kind of how I got my start in statistics. It was actually at Lancaster, the university I'm at now. So I finished my MSc in statistics in 2017. And with that, I think my degree was eligible for the grad stat program. So in January 2018, once I had my degree certificate in my hand, I applied and got accepted to the grad stat program. Then I got the fellowship at the same time, so I became a member. And after that, I started my PhD program, I think, in the September, October of 2018. So as soon as I joined, I realised that there were a lot of other students on the RSS local group for Lancashire and Cumbria. And it tended to be that a lot of the meetings were held at Lancaster University anyway, and a lot of my fellow students were either on the committee or leading it. So at that point, I expressed an interest in not just being a member, but also joining the local group. So I was on the local group committee for a number of years. In 2020, I became secretary for the local group, but that was the year of the pandemic. And at that point, I think I attended the meeting in January that the RSS holds to induct new officers to life of being on the committee, but also running the local group. And then all of that we learned, the chair and I, we kind of wanted to use, but then the pandemic hit and we didn't really do much. I think we had one event with Deborah Ashby that was kind of our big hit online. And then after a year, I was like, okay, I think I was getting into sort of the second half of my PhD, and I realised that this wasn't really something that I could sustain over the pandemic. So I stepped back down to being just a committee member, and I helped out with a few other events. I think in 2021 we held an event for women in maths that was also with the local group, but with this time with a new chair, and that was really, really great as well. So I've had some experience of being on the local group for a few years and helping to run events. And then the YSS were holding nominations for being elected to the committee, and then I applied in October of 2021, got accepted, and then from January of this year I have now been on the committee for the YSS as well. So it's been slowly evolving, I think, especially because there's no local group in London and I'm now based in London for work. I'm kind of glad that the YSS is kind of filling the gap for that. Yeah. My role on the Young Statistician section right now is just as a committee member. I've helped out on a few different things throughout this year, notably helping with judging for significance, and we're holding a secret statistician event in October that I'm helping to run. I think this year is largely about finding my bearings. I'm also finishing up my PhD and starting work, so I didn't want to take on too much, but I've kind of started getting involved. I think next year I definitely want to use some of my volunteer days to like work at the RSS conference. There's a few things that I do want to get involved with, but right now it's just supporting, I suppose actually in a very minor capacity on the committee, helping out here and there with a few events, and whatever can be done remotely, like kind of taken on. Yeah. There's a sense of community, I think. I think the term statistician is somehow quickly losing favor in a world that's full of terms like AI and data science and I don't know, business analytics. There's lots of other words that people use for the same bunch of skills, but it's a really nice feeling to be involved with an organization that kind of honors the tradition of what we actually do. Like all of this stuff stems from statistics and an exploration of data and a fun and sort of like a principled exploration of data and how we understand the world. So I think that's a really lovely thing to celebrate, and I certainly am very proud of being trained, like having had training as a statistician. So that's definitely something that just on principle I really love. I also really love meeting people who are at similar stages of their career to me, and kind of getting just to hear what they're up to or what their perspective is. I think definitely I've enjoyed getting to know people through this experience, and it's just been a lovely way to hang out with other statisticians. I think especially if you're an academic or you're working in as a PhD student, you get to know people within your institution, but being an RSS member and certainly being on committees as a volunteer has helped me to get to know people with different backgrounds and different experiences, and some of them who haven't necessarily gotten as much training in statistics, or who have come into it in a different field. Just hearing about their perspectives is also just really lovely. Yeah, it just feels like a celebration to be part of the RSS. Fundamentally, I think that I've gained a lot of, I wouldn't call them soft skills, but definitely a lot of communication based skills from being part of the RSS. And I think that's definitely the thing that I attribute to the most. It's definitely helped my confidence in terms of just talking about other topics and understanding other perspectives. Being a fellow has meant that I've gone to talks, whether those are in London or not, or online, on a range of topics that I wouldn't have necessarily come across in my day-to-day as a student. And that has been really wonderful. But also just in terms of being on the committees and having to organise events and work out what a user would want from the experience of attending a talk has really kind of shaped my ability to communicate and organise. And I have a really great appreciation for people who run events now and who work really hard to do that. And I think that that's been a wonderful thing to add to my skill set. And I think that's probably the biggest way that it's kind of opened my eyes. I also think that it has opened my eyes to other career opportunities that I may not have considered previously. And that's definitely something that I will continue to incorporate into my, like, any future job search that I have, or any other career moments that I make. I am on the path to try and be a chartered statistician purely for the purpose of having that. So I guess that's another thing that it's motivated me to do. Yeah, I think I really just like, there's no real requirement as a data scientist to be a member of the RSS or to even be a fellow or to be involved. But I think that it's nice to volunteer and to be a member of an organisation that really champions something that I believe in professionally. And it's just really wonderful to be within a community that can support that. And that to me is just a wonderful way to support my career. I think that nothing necessarily has to be gained for monetary value or for the accolade. And maybe my 18-year-old self would disagree, and that's definitely like an adult thing that's come into me. Yeah, it's just nice to be proud of something, and I happily mention that if anyone who wants to know that I'm a member of the RSS, and that's kind of how I'll view it at the moment. It could be that it offers me a different career opportunity that I haven't come across yet. My first job I applied through largely just putting my CV out there. It could be that in the future it offers me something different. Yeah, I think largely it is a wonderful way to network and to be a part of a professional community, and that in itself is a real joy. There's a couple of things. I think as someone who loves to learn, it's a great place to be because there's no shortage of things that you will learn. You're constantly running into something that someone else knows that you don't, or that you need to pick up for a project. And there's also just a wonderful sense of learning lots of different types of skills. It's kind of important when you're a statistician or a data scientist to be good at communication, but also be good at coding and be good at presenting, which is something that I'm still working on, and being good at written communication, especially if you're an academic, and also understanding the topic itself. That's a really big part of it. And I think it's a multifaceted area to work in and to do research in. Yeah, and that's definitely one of the things that I really love about it and inspires me constantly. I think another thing is that there's just so many challenges to explore. It's kind of like the Swiss Army knife of sciences. I really like talking about statistics that way. I'd say it's accessible to anyone who wants to learn, and the skills are available. And two, if you do a PhD in statistics, make sure that you really love the subject and you're willing to put in the time.